The American Army did not defeat German snipers rifle for rifle. It beat them with a stopwatch, a compass, and a map grid. In the hedgerow country of Normandy, a technician 4th grade on an infantry division's artillery net hears the crack of a rifle round past his head. He counts the gap to the distant thump, takes a bearing, and reads a 6-digit coordinate into his handset. He never sees the man who fired. He never will. On a pre-plotted concentration, the answering shells could arrive in barely more than a minute. This is a documented system, and it worked because sound, paper, and radio were chained into one lethal machine. But how do you put a shell on a man you never once saw, from 1 second of sound? That is the machine, link by link. The German sniper was both a tactical weapon and a psychological burden. He operated from upper floor windows, church towers, and hedgerows where a single bullet could stop an advance without revealing its source. American troops learned to treat every silhouette and every glint of light as a potential threat, and the waiting wore on them as much as the shooting did. FM 2175, the Army's manual on scouting, patrolling, and sniping, devotes pages to the danger. It instructs scouts to remain motionless while observing, to avoid skyline exposure, and to eliminate any glisten from equipment that might catch the sun. Instructions that careful mean one thing. Carelessness draws fire, and the hidden rifleman always shoots first. American units approached the problem from a different angle. Rather than hunt the sniper with counter-snipers alone, they treated his hide, in practice, as just another map target, a building or a tree line that an observer could plot and engage with indirect fire when infantry maneuver was too costly or too slow. By the middle of the war, call for fire training reached down to platoon leaders, and the guns themselves were tied together by the most responsive fire control system of the war. That meant an observer could task artillery against a small and fleeting target without stripping support from larger operations. But speed mattered. A sniper who fired once could relocate before a patrol reached his position. The only answer fast enough was a chain that compressed everything, from the first crack of the bullet to the fall of the shell, into the space of a minute or two. No single report records one man using every link of this chain against one sniper. But every link is in the manuals and the field records, and this is how they fit together when a real round passes a real man's head. The field records show the practice plainly. In the Normandy fighting, church steeples drew American fire on suspicion alone, because the steeple was the best observation post and sniper perch for miles, and everyone on both sides knew it. Wartime issues of the Intelligence Bulletin and the Combat Lesson series, compiled from frontline reports, told infantry officers what units were already doing. When a hidden rifleman held up an advance and could not be flanked, the fastest solution was often a concentration of high explosive on the building that hid him. The men writing those reports did not romanticize it. A sniper cost lives by the hour, and the guns were available by the minute. The choice to use artillery against a single hidden rifleman raised questions of proportion and precision. A high explosive shell does not discriminate between a sniper and the floor he stands on. But Doctrine treated the building, the hedgerow, or the ridgeline as the target, not the man inside it. The system was built to deny the position entirely, whether the sniper survived the blast or not. The chain begins with a split-second sensory impression and ends with high explosive on a coordinate. The radioman hears the supersonic crack of the bullet as it passes, then the delayed thump of the muzzle blast. He estimates range from the gap between those two sounds, takes a bearing from the direction of the thump, and translates both into a grid reference on his map. That grid is the input, and the rest is machinery. The physics behind crack and thump are straightforward. A rifle bullet leaves the muzzle at roughly 2 to 2.5 times the speed of sound. sound itself covers about 340 meters each second. Because the bullet outruns the sound of the shot, an observer hears the sonic boom first, as a sharp crack, and the muzzle blast second, as a lower frequency thump. The gap between them equals the sound's travel time minus the bullet's flight time, and that is exactly why the gap stretches with distance far more than sound alone would suggest. Soldiers on both fronts use the idea in the field, and after the war, the Army codified it into a simple heuristic in its sniper manual, FM 2310. A 1 second lapse between crack and thump corresponds to roughly 600 yards. A half-second lapse corresponds to roughly 300. Commonwealth fieldcraft training, carried into post-war Canadian manuals, taught its own rule of thumb, about 2/3 of a second at 300 meters. The two rules do not quite agree, and neither pretends to be an instrument. They are ways for a man with a racing heart to turn 1 second of sound into a usable number. So if the radio man counts a 1 second gap, he calls the shooter roughly 600 yards out. That single second is the first number in a sequence that will soon have 6 digits and a grid square. The method has real limits. Later analyses put its useful reach at around 500 meters. Beyond that, bullet deceleration and messy sound geometry make mental counting unreliable, and adrenaline and battlefield noise degrade it further. It was a field expedient, meant to be combined with other methods rather than trusted alone. But range is only half a grid. He still needs a direction. Direction comes from the thump. The muzzle blast indicates the bearing of the weapon, though hills, buildings, and tree lines can reflect and distort the sound. The observer orients toward the source, then scans the bearing line using the systematic techniques described in FM 2175. He examines sunlit ground, then shadowed ground, focusing on areas with tactical value. Upper floor windows, the junction of terrain types, slopes near crests. At dusk or under starlight, scanning slows. The observer pauses for several seconds in one direction, paying attention to objects off his direct line of vision, then shifts his gaze slightly and pauses again. Visual cues refine the estimates, and fieldcraft training reduced them to rules of appearance that survived into post-war Commonwealth manuals. At 200 meters, all parts of a man's body are distinct. At 300, the outline of the face blurs. At 400, the face is hard to distinguish, but the body outline remains. At 500, the body appears to taper. If the radioman sees a muzzle flash, dust from the shot, or an unnatural shape in a window, he adjusts his grid. If not, he works with the bearing and the range estimate alone. Either way, he now has a location. 2 accelerations are already waiting for him. The first is the pre-plotted concentration. Artillery batteries have computed firing data in advance for numbered reference points across their sector, so a grid that falls on or near one of them is a problem the gunners have already half solved. The second is time on target, a refinement that could land every shell from every firing battery on one point in the same second. Both will matter in the next 90 seconds. He keys the handset, fire mission, grid 473612, sniper, second floor, stone building, high explosive, fuse quick, fire for effect. A few seconds of radio traffic and a man he has never seen has been sentenced by a man he will never meet. Every piece of that message carries weight. His call sign, sent first, tells the fire direction center who is calling and anchors the mission to a known vantage point, which matters for corrections and for safety. The warning order tells them what kind of mission this is. Adjust fire, walking rounds onto the target with successive corrections, or fire for effect at once. Against a sniper who has just fired and may already be moving, speed favors the immediate option. The grid itself is only as good as the radio man's knowledge of his own position. get that wrong and every shell inherits the error. The target description, kept as brief as fact allows, helps the fire direction crew choose shell and fuse. Quick fuse for an open position. Delay if the man is behind walls or in a cellar. Method of fire comes last, a single volley, a battery concentration, or something heavier if the position is part of a strong point. In practice, a request like this normally passed through a forward observer team and was vetted on the artillery net. The radioman was one voice in a disciplined conversation, not a free agent with a division's guns. Under sniper fire, he must weigh the risk to his own men against the delay of a more careful mission and the possibility of collateral damage. The manuals compress these judgments into a few curt transmissions, but the hesitation is real. He is asking for lethal force on a building whose occupants he will never see. The field manuals do not have a chapter for that. Once the call is sent, the mission belongs to the Fire Direction Center, and the radioman can only wait. The call leaves his handset and enters a room he has never seen. The Fire Direction Center is a huddle of enlisted men and officers with map boards, firing tables, slide rules, and telephones. Their job is to convert the observer's grid into gun-specific settings for every piece that will fire. The process begins with plotting the target on the firing chart. The crew determines each gun's position relative to the target, then calculates the deflection and quadrant elevation needed to place a round on that point. From there, they apply corrections for powder temperature, barrel wear, wind, and air density. Each factor nudges the shell's trajectory, and firing tables compiled from thousands of test rounds tell them exactly how much. For a pre-plotted concentration, much of this work is already finished. The target exists in the files as a numbered point with its base data computed. The crew retrieves the stored solution and applies the day's meteorological corrections, cutting the response from minutes towards seconds. On a busy net, the Fire Direction Center may be running several missions at once. The sniper's call is one more grid reference in a stream of coordinates, but to the radioman who sent it, it is the only one that matters. Time on target adds a final layer of synchronization. The coordinator sets a future moment, a specific minute and second when every shell must land. Each battery then fires at the moment its own time of flight demands. The rounds with the longest flight leave first, and the shortest wait until the last seconds of the countdown. The result is a wall of simultaneous impacts, every round arriving in the same second, multiplying shock and leaving whoever is underneath no time to react. The guns load, the crew set deflection and quadrant on their sights. Powder, shell, fuse. Each chief checks his settings against the data passed from the Fire Direction Center, and the battery executive watches the clock. When the countdown reaches 0, the guns fire in the staggered sequence that will make their rounds converge. Once the guns fire, the shell has flight time before impact. At the ranges typical of these engagements, that interval spans tens of seconds. If the sniper recognizes the radio call and understands what follows, he has a brief window to move. In practice, he often does not recognize it at all. The radio traffic is routine, and the pause before the guns fire is indistinguishable from any other lull. Then the coordinate erupts. High explosive on a farmhouse, a tree line, a ridge line. The effective radius of a 155 shell is measured in tens of meters. The sniper's advantage, his ability to place a single bullet with precision, means nothing against a blast measured in yards. The position is destroyed or denied, the upper floor becomes rubble, the tree line becomes splinters. In fairness to the record, a full time-on-target concentration against one rifleman would have been rare. Usually the answer was smaller, a single battery or the infantry's own mortars. Time on target was built for battalions and enemy gun lines, where the coordination was worth the cost. But the machinery behind it could engage any plotted point. The system scaled down as easily as it scaled up. After the last round, the radioman waits. Smoke drifts off the coordinate he chose. The rifle that started all of this is silent. But then, it was silent between shots before. He does not know if the sniper is dead, wounded, relocated, or was never in the building at all. The system does not require him to know. To the gunnery manual, FM 640, a target is a coordinate, and the mathematics are identical whether the grid square holds a battalion or one man with a rifle. The observer is a link in a chain. The chain either works or it does not. What the manuals never address is the weight of the act. The radioman has killed, or may have killed, a man he never saw. He called down force from a distance, using numbers spoken into a handset, and the result was destruction he witnessed only through binoculars or through the sound of the guns. That distance is the system's strength and its cost. It made killing efficient. It also made it impersonal. The American army did not beat the German sniper with sharper eyes or faster rifles. It beat him with a stopwatch, a compass, and a map grid, and with a room full of men doing mathematics under lamplight. The radio man sat at one end of that system. The sniper sat at the other. If this one was worth your time, subscribe for more military history told straight from the record.